Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Today we're going to talk about math and Big Wolf on Campus. And here's how this video is going to go. I'm going to give some background on Big Wolf on Campus, and I'm going to talk about that for a bit and talk about how math is used along the way, including on that meta level. And I'm just going to have fun doing it because, like, Big Wolf on Campus was one of my favorite shows growing up. You're free to assume spoilers ahead. I do not want to hold back. I don't think, though, that they'll impact your enjoyment of the show, but if you want to avoid them, I get that. That being said, again, spoilers ahead. Let's get into it proper. So, Big Wolf on Campus, for the uninitiated, is a hilarious werewolf themed sitcom from the late 90s, early 2000s. It ran for 3 seasons, spanning 1999 to 2002, and ran for 65 episodes. And it was hilarious. It definitely took some cues from Teen Wolf for sure. It was kind of like a parody of that, but like so much more. Like I think it's better to say it was inspired by it. It parodies it, and it parodies so many other things. But Teen Wolf itself was also like not a very serious thing though either. That being said, right? Like it's a sitcom, and it ran for about 22 minutes or so, which you would expect for a lot of sitcoms for a good while. It's different once upon a time. It's different now, just generally speaking. But at any rate, there's so much fun to be had with that show. And so, like I said, I'm going to give you some background. I've already started giving you some background, and we'll talk about the math as we go. But I wanted to say just that I have a fondness of that show because it was hysterical. Like I did like the action bits, though there was some variety and equality in those, but they got the job done. But for me, it's like it wasn't just the action, right? It was the humor. It was the situations. It was the range because you had the show, right, where it could have just been like, okay, we're gonna have this monster of the week situation, and it was that, but where it becomes more though is like we're gonna have that situation and we're gonna just like tackle so many different things because like okay we have like a werewolf and his best friend and later an additional member of their team, right? So you have these characters, and it's like, well, who are they fighting like week to week, situation to situation? Well, you might expect things like vampires and mummies, ghosts and demons and stuff like that, which there's also like, just some range in that. But there's also cyborgs and aliens, and while you might expect some supernatural situations, you might not expect things like time travel and parallel dimensions. There was a lot going on in that show, and so there was a lot of comedy and a lot of movie references, and it was a good time. And so, where does the math come in? In many ways, it comes in how it comes into our real world, but we can explain better than that, can't we? So to start, right? Math is everywhere and in everything, and math in an academic sense is something that does come up. I mean, they're in school, we can't really avoid that, and it comes up in different situations, but also just how we're navigating this world, right? We live in a universe of shapes and of motion. And there's math at every conceivable level, right? Going all the way down to the subatomic, but extending all the way out to the cosmic. And so you have characters, use it how you might think that they use it, but other avenues that maybe you don't expect is like, let's take the fights. So with any given fights, if you just have like that basic idea of a fight and then expand to include powers, we could have some fun with that because it's like um, you have the idea of fighting, right? Like you could kind of look at it like how you would a game. You are trying to get your opponent down to 0% for their health, and you're trying to not go down to 0%. So in the context of the show, that's what they're doing when they're going at it with each other, right? And there's many things that they're considering. They're considering like the motion of like, let's say like Tommy, the main character, like if he's fighting someone, like let's say just a vampire for instance, then he has to consider his position, the vampire's position, the speeds that he can move at, the speeds that they can move at, and their strength and all that, and the different angles which you're hitting or moving or they're coming at you, the different positions you're taking throughout that fight. So you're considering position, you're considering speed, you're considering time, you're considering different angles and all this other stuff. And it's just like it's math in motion. And you're going back and forth, you're striking and countering and doing all this stuff. And then of course you have different abilities, like for a vampire, for instance, they might be able to turn into a bat. And you have to figure that one out. But like I said, they have a wide range of people that they fought, because you have Tommy, who could transform into a werewolf, and he's the main character, the de facto main character. And you have Merton, his best friend, and later Lori, who she joins their crew, and they become a trio, and she's a fighter. And so you have these like two fighting characters, and Merton, who uses his brain and sometimes gets into the fray, but not in a way that like Tommy or Lori gets into it. But my whole thing is like, so you have this trio, as the show goes on, and they're fighting these different opponents, and so they have different things that you have to worry about in a typical fight. But it's just like, well, what do you do with a ghost who's like possessing someone, or teleporting, right? You have to adjust your strategy. Sorry, you have to adjust your strategy, consider the environment, stuff like that. And so with these fights, it's like there's a whole lot of math going on, a whole lot of physics, a whole lot of everything. And then like these different characters, they have different like biological attributes to consider. And it's all like math and action and how it gets across to you and how the fights are choreographed to you. That is math too, which takes me kind of to a larger level, right? Like there's so much math that goes into like filming a scene, right? Because you have the fights to start, and then we can branch out from there. But you have the fights, and it's like you have the things that the characters are considering, some of which that I mentioned, and of course more than that. But you have the idea of like how it's choreographed, right? Because you have like, hey, I'm gonna have this character do this motion, take this position at this angle, and so on and so forth, and I'm going to like film this and film that and edit this and edit that. And there's like so much math that goes into the choreography, into like actually filming the process. And there's the lighting, there's the sound and the music, there's math and what these things are and how they're implemented into a given scene, right? And then you have the idea that this is a comedy, right? There's action, but it's also a comedy, right? And when you think about comedy, right, it's very mathematical in nature, right? You have setup plus punchline equals joke. And how that gets across to you will vary, because it could be something physical, it could be a running gag, it could be a visual gag, it could be any number of things, and at their core, they're all math. And so I like how it all comes together for Big Wolf, because there's definitely a formula that they have throughout the show. Because, like I said, on one level, it's kind of like a monster of the week situation, but it's so much more than that too, right? Because there is an overarching plot as the series goes on, and there's just so many like fun things with the jokes and the references. Um, but it's just like, yeah. I like that there's still like a formula, but they're not afraid to tweak that, because like you had like those average villains, right? But then you might have a larger threat that's recurring, like the werewolf syndicate. And like, oh my god, when that arc started, it was just fun. There's just so much cool stuff going on, and I dig it. And so it's like there's math and how all it gets across to you, and I dig that show. And also, let's talk about the theme song for a second. It is a banger. I dig it. And it's kind of cool to me because, okay, so there's a couple things to talk about with this, right? Because like when you get down to like light and sound and all that good stuff, right? Like, it's physics, it's math, and it's just like light and sound. Like, not only are, they math, or so, not only are they math, but their properties and how they're used, right? And so when it comes to, music in particular, I like that because, well, because it's awesome. But it's just like, okay, so you're taking sound and it's like physical properties and it's mathematical properties, and you're like, hey, how can I use this to invoke feeling, to get across something? And so with the Big Wolf on Campus theme, I like that because it's like there's a couple things going on, right? Like you have about what this is like somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds, I forget. But you have that to kind of like get a setup to the show, to pump up the action, and you want it to be catchy. You want it to get across what you need to get it across, and I think it does a good job. And then it's just like, okay, not only do you have the music and you have this limited amount of time, and not only do you have like math and that, but also the visuals that are coming your way. Like, what clips are you choosing? How long are you choosing these clips? What are they conveying to you is the audience? And so you have this situation where like, hey, I'm going to have this like 20-second or 30-second segment, and I'm going to be showing you a lot, and I'm going to be saying things with the words, the lyrics. So, and everything has to like cut together, and it also takes up part of the show. So it's like, hey, I have this thing that it's like it's taking up a certain amount of space in the show each time, right? And so not only are you making that count, but it's also serving that role of like, hey, taking up part of that episode while also conveying something to you from part of the story, right? Because like you see different clips of different things that happen in different episodes, but you know, there you might see action oriented stuff, or comedic stuff, but while all that's happening, you have the theme song, and it kind of gets to the point of the show. And I dig it. It's a bop. I like it. So, at any rate, there's so much more that I could talk about, and that can go for anything, right? And there's always just like math lurking at every level, right? It's not just what you thought, it's so much more. It's just how everything functions and flows, right? It's the superpower you've always had, right? You may not write it down. Sorry, you may not always write it down, but you're always doing the math. You may not always talk about it, but it's there. And I dig that, and I dig Big Wolf on Campus, and it was such a fun show. I remember it fondly. I have seen it in my adult life, but not recently. But last time that I did see it, I think it was about oh my god, almost 10 years at this point. But it was still fun then, and I would like to see that again at some point in the future. And if you're wondering, I was just thinking about it earlier. It was on my list because like I have a long list and I wanted to get to that, but there was other things ahead of this that I was going to make. But I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking about the theme song, and I'm like, screw it, I'm going to make that today because right, there's no actual rules to this. I have like different lists, and I do have ways that I prioritize things, but it's just like yeah, when I want to make something, I'm gonna make it. And I like that. That's fun. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you've never heard of Big Wolf on Campus, I'm sorry, I hope that this was something that was fun for you and helped you learn a little about a show that you may be like unfamiliar with. And if you are familiar with Big Wolf on Campus, I hope it was nostalgic for you. And I hope you think about that show fondly. I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.